2 years ago, I fell down 30 marble stairs right here in Boston. It wasn't a little trip. I didn't randomly stumble. I fell down 30 marble stairs. I landed at the bottom and I could barely breathe. I was hyperventilating, and before I knew it, there was a crowd around me, and then the ambulance came. When I was taken into the ambulance, in the process of that, I knew I was broken. So later I met with my surgeon, of course, and he showed me my x-rays, and I had shattered my femur. The femur is the strongest bone in the body, and I had shattered that, and I'd also fractured a bone in my right shoulder. So it was already a long recovery time, but it was double because I had injured both sides of my body. So from the hospital, I got transferred to a rehab unit so I could learn how to walk again. And that's when I started to chat with friends and extended family, and they all said the same thing: you're gonna bounce back. Valerie, you're strong, you're gonna bounce back. It's gonna be fine. But here, I don't know, like, think about a ball, like, this is what everybody thinks that resilience actually is, but it's also what I realized it isn't. So you think of a bouncing ball, you throw it against the wall, comes back unchanged. But you can't unbreak a bone, and you can't unshatter a life. So I literally had this example when, years ago, I lived in Connecticut with my 4 kids, and I owned a home, and there was this freak storm that came through, and I don't know, it kind of like hit our yard and then it disappeared. We had this huge house, or a huge tree in the front of the house, and it snapped. It didn't like fall from the roots up, it snapped, which meant that it came down on our house with the power of 30 tons, I was told. It literally broke our house in half. So this was June, my kids were younger then, they were about to transition out of like the school year, and then we were gonna go into the summer stuff, and we were like, our lives were upended. And we had to go to a hotel. I'm like, oh my God, how am I gonna like cook? And I have to get this kid to whatever camp. And it was crazy. So finally got into a rental home, and then it was time to rebuild the home. I couldn't go backwards, couldn't put a tarp on the roof and call it a day. We literally started at the top and rebuilt the roof, the attic, the second floor, the first floor, and had to check the structure. So it was definitely a rebuild, but with all of that, it became more valuable. We had a stronger roof, we had a better insulated attic, and honestly, we had some HGTV-like finishes in the kitchen. So it brought more value. I also had a break with my business. So I started my own business in 2003, doing PR and marketing and events. Now, 1 million people do this, so I'm like, okay, sure. But then I started to hear about this thing called blogging. And then it was MySpace and a little bit of Facebook. This was the beginning of social media. I knew with every cell in my body that social media was going to be a thing for business. I just knew it. So I built a tech team, I brought in salespeople, and we went for it. We had all these contacts, we had decision makers, people who could say yes to our big idea, and we went in and we made the presentation, and they said no, no, nope, no. They said no. And one guy even said, oh, that stuff is for social media, or for teenagers. I'm like, oh my God. So was I gonna go back to PR, marketing, and events and just listen to everybody? No, I wasn't. I realized that I had to educate on a grander level, so I created what some say is the first conference ever in the United States showing businesses how to use social media as a marketing tool. In that room was IBM, GE, Pitney Bowes, Ford, Hearst, like big guns. We were all trying to figure it out. And from that moment on, I rebuilt my business. Now, I also had a life break. So I have 4 kids, and each one of them went off to school. The youngest the youngest one went to school. And all of a sudden, I had like all this space. Anybody who is an empty nester understands But anyway, I had all this space. I still had my business, but had all this space. Like, what's my life gonna look like? I'm like, do I go back to what I was doing before I had kids? And honestly, that included going to nightclubs maybe 2 or 3 times a week in New York. So was I gonna do that? No, I wasn't. I decided to get my master's at Boston University Metropolitan College. I did it virtually because I was still in Connecticut. It was there that I met Dr. Marcus Gonsalves, who a lot of us know. And from there, Dr. Marcus Gonsalves invited me to come and teach at BU Met. I literally rebuilt my life into a beautiful place that it is today. Something I never imagined, but I rebuilt from this empty space. So there is this Japanese art form called Kintsugi. And the idea is that the pottery is broken and you don't just throw it away. You fill in the veins of where the breaks were with lacquer and powdered gold. So the idea is that it makes the pottery more beautiful and more valuable. So I have a bunch of Kintsugis, by the way, in my life. I have a scar that goes from my knee all the way up to my hip. I am standing here today, and that's my Kintsugi. I have a house that was rebuilt, and I sold it in July, and it sold pretty well because of those changes years ago when it broke. And I had this beautiful life. I have this beautiful life here at BU with many of you, many faces I recognize, that I never imagined because I rebuilt. So a lot of you are BU students and going through it, right? There's a lot of pressure. You got to get the grades. You got to figure out what the next steps are. You got to hustle. Maybe it's you want a relationship, whatever it is. You're trying to do all of these things and not break. But you're going to break because it happens, and it's going to be a dark moment, and it's going to be really, really hard. You're going to fail an exam. You're not going to get the internship. You're not going to get the job. Maybe a degree is going to disappear. Maybe somebody breaks up with you. All of these things can happen, but just remember the idea of Kintsugi, that your breaks are not your deficit. They are your powdered gold. They are what make you unique and special. It is an opportunity to live a more interesting life, more compelling, more compassionate, and more beautiful because you had the courage to rebuild. That is the beauty of the break. Oops.